This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. K-State Watershed Specialist Stacie Minson and City of Hayes Water Conservation Specialist Holly Dickman begin today's show discussing what people should be evaluating when it comes to their water wells and landscape irrigation. Continuing the show is Sandy Johnson, K-State Beef Reproduction Specialist, as she explains considerations for cattle producers with pregnant yearling heifers. Mike Brouk, K-State Dairy Specialist, ends today's show by offering tips for protecting exposed skin as we move into the winter months and maintaining a healthy teat condition can become challenging. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show talking about water with K-State Watershed Specialist Stacie Minson and City of Hayes Water Conservation Specialist Holly Dickman. Stacie, Holly, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
As we talk about water, wanting to mention something that a lot of agricultural producers probably have on their property, a water well, and things that they should be taking care of.
You know, turn the faucet on each day, whether it's to water livestock, specifically in the house, to get that cup of coffee going. And those wells, those private domestic wells for household use, nobody's regulating those. Those are up to that private well owner. So we know in the state of Kansas we have approximately 151,000 private wells. So we need to look at those. We need to start deciding every year, 1st of January, 15th of July, we put a note in our calendars or on our phone so we get a reminder to test those private wells.
And what testing needs to be done?
There's a lot of things that can be tested. The biggest thing is nitrates, E. coli bacterias, and then we can look at total dissolved solids, sulfates, chlorides. There's a large list of things, but the two big major ones we want to look at are nitrates and groundwater for health reasons.
How could maybe someone go about doing this testing?
So there's private labs. You can go to your local K-State Research and Extension office, pick up a kit. They have them available at no charge. You collect the water samples according to the instructions. And then you can either, if you live close to the private labs, you can take it in there directly, or you can mail them. And we ask that you do it at the beginning of the week, as close to the time that the mail goes out, because there is a holding time, especially for the bacteria. And then the samples get sent in, the lab sends you the results, and as a private well owner, you pay that yourself.
And you said this testing should be done every year, and why does it need to be done hopefully yearly?
Well, we just think about, we look at the drought that we're in. The drought is going to make those wells pull deeper, and so if there are contaminants, if it has high nitrate levels, if it has bacteria issues, if it has high salts, we're going to be going deeper into that well, and if we haven't had rain to recharge them, then we're always taught dilution is the solution. If we haven't had the water, then the wells are going to be pumping harder and deeper, so we could have more contaminant levels. So, just doing it consistently so that you're at the same time every year, just like when we go get a physical. We usually do those annually around the same time, or you get your teeth checked or your eyes checked. So, it's not a hard process. It's just getting in the routine of doing it.
So really not the good theory of it's been okay in the past, I should not worry about it for the future?
Yeah, we know we get caught in that. My granddad didn't do it. My dad didn't do it, so I'm not going to do it. Probably not the wisest decision anymore. And most of us have good intentions to do these things. We just get busy and crazy with life, and we forget to do it until someone gets sick and someone has a health issue. You go to your doctor and they say, well, what's different? Well, if you've not tested your well, you don't know. And so if you live in a city, you live in a community, you're on a rural water district, they have state and federal laws that they have to test that so that they know that that water coming out is safe, clean, and meets state and federal standards.
And Holly, when we look at it in an urban setting, beforehand you said you do a lot of water education. And
yes.
What is some of that education?
Well, it's amazing how many people don't know where their water comes from. So that's the first thing. Where does your water come from? Where does it go? How is it treated? Like Stacie said, the city of Hayes with our water, we do have to test, the city water every 2 hours. It gets tested for safety and make sure it's in good shape to go through the pipes. We do have a lot of private wells in town also, so we try to incorporate some of that education as well, because a lot of people are using those private wells for landscape irrigation and things like that. So we cover all aspects. I focus a great deal on outdoor water use in the landscape, especially. And that's where Stacie and I work a lot together, because the stormwater and the water quality side and then the water conservation side, they all combine there in the landscape. And so we talk a lot about landscape practices that influence water use, landscape practices that influence water quality. And so we talk about those private wells, not to overwater when we're in drought like we have been. That's very, very common. And then with the irrigation systems that people have, their sprinkler systems, just trying to educate people on proper maintenance, proper system design and installation, all of those things, proper running times for those sprinkler systems, just on the landscape scale.
For people who do want that green yard for a little bit longer, what are a few tips to hopefully maybe get it or maybe don't worry about it?
Well, certainly in our neck of the woods, we talk a lot about right plant, right place. So we are not encouraging cool season turf grass at all in Hayes, Kansas. If we can get by with the warm season grasses, we highly encourage that. And actually, we have a rebate program to have people remove the cool season turf grasses in Hayes. But, knowing what is in your landscape is the first step. You got to know what the plants are if you want to maintain them and water them properly. So if you have a buffalo grass lawn and you're fertilizing and watering and doing everything here in November, that's not the right time of year for that, for a buffalo grass lawn. So just the education about the horticulture side of things, the plants, the watering, all of that goes together. And so we talk a little bit about all of those things.
So when it comes to water, health, safety, conservation, what are a few tips you have for our listeners today?
Well, if we look at the water quality side, and it goes along with water conservation, as Holly said, we work hand in hand. If we do some things for water quality, if we're picking up pet waste in our yards in the urban side, one, we're not going to have the runoff when we water, so it's not going to go down the street into the creek or river, which ultimately ends up in a reservoir. Same on the farms. If we can manage where our livestock are, especially if we would have a feeding area right above this private well, if that wellhead is not secure and sealed, we could have that bacteria and that nitrate running into that wellhead, contaminating that private domestic drinking water well and not even know it. So when Holly mentioned right place, having wells put in and maintained above feeding sites. The other thing, we look at fertilizing lawns, fertilizing crops. If we're mixing fertilizer, filling the spray tanks right by the well, which, we need the water, just paying attention, because we could easily contaminate wells and not even think anything of it, because that's where we've always done that. So we updated some K-State research and extension publications. We have one that's testing private water systems that gives you tips on what to test, where to put a private well. There's another publication on private well maintenance and protection. And then we also have a nitrate and groundwater. And this is all through the K-State 105 program. Luckily, we've been working with the Cottonwood Extension District, Midway Extension District, and now also Twin Creeks, along with the City of Hayes, Fort Hays State. So if you live in one of those areas, we're doing private well testing at no charge. So you just need to get in touch with one of the county agents in those offices or myself, and we can get you signed up. Holly and I work together trying to do some of this education, helping people know the things that all of us don't know.
And there is a K-State community visit coming up where people can learn more information?
Yes, that will be on Monday, November 18th in Hayes at the Ag Research Center. And there's no charge. We will actually be utilizing some of the things that we're doing in the K-State 105. We'll have hands-on displays with the Enviroscape, with the groundwater model. We're going to actually have Alex Stanton, a PhD student here at Kansas State University, come out and do some landscape irrigation. I'll let Holly share that here.
Well, he came out to help us audit some residential irrigation systems this past summer, and we're planning to do some more of this in the future. But how we do that is we set up catch cans throughout the yard, run the irrigation system. He takes note of, misaligned sprinkler heads or things that just aren't functioning right. And that's all part of that evaluation. And then we can tell, is the distribution uniformity of that water coming out of those sprinkler heads fairly accurate, or are we way off the mark? And unfortunately, in Hayes, we saw a lot of systems that were definitely not very uniform. So Alex will be at the Know Your Water community visit on Monday to talk about some of those things and set up some catch cans. Just give people an idea of how that works.
And the other part we're going to do, we're going to go out to a farmer and ranchers right south of town, a couple miles, and show the urban side in town. We've talked about how we're looking at these landscape irrigations. We're going to actually pull a sample from Ernie's private well. We'll get it analyzed, and then we're going to show how he has fenced off Big Creek, put in alternative water supplies instead of using that water in Big Creek, which ultimately goes to Canopolis Reservoir, and then show him how he's protecting the water supplies on the ag side while we've looked at what we're doing on the urban side together. So we want to look at that, groundwater, surface water. We truly are one water in the state of Kansas, and K-State Research and Extension and City of Hayes and our partners are doing everything they can to help farmers and ranchers and well owners protect their water supplies.
How can people RSVP for this K-State community visit?
They can actually call me at 785-769-3297. And then we do have a website. We'll make sure we get that to you as well.
Stacie, Holly, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was K-State Watershed Specialist Stacie Minson and City of Hayes Water Conservation Specialist Holly Dickman. I will link the resources that were mentioned in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Thursday show and conversation yesterday about spring-born heifer development. As of today, we discussed pregnant yearling heifers with K-State Beef Reproduction Specialist Sandy Johnson. Sandy, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Continuing that conversation today, and Sandy, if operations do have pregnant yearling heifers, what are some things that they really need to keep in mind?
Right. The summertime generally is easy for these heifers. They've been out to grass, hopefully AI, bull-bred combination thereof. Things are looking good. We get them pregged up and we see who we have to work with. Well, so those heifers are still growing. And so they have their own growth plus that fetal growth. And we know that fetal growth becomes very rapid during that last 90 days. And so, at some point, she needs to gain about 150 pounds of calf and fluids prior to calving, above and beyond, what her weight should be, independent of that. Okay. So when we think about when you have targeted your calving to start, what that heifer weighs, say today in November, she needs to probably still gain this 150 pounds. And depending on how long it is until she calves, if I've got 100 days to gain 150 pounds, that's like a pound and a half a day to get that 150 pounds. Now, if I kind of lose track of them and I see, well, they've kind of been sitting there and she still needs to gain this 150 pounds. And maybe I kind of think she's losing a little body condition because that's what she's going to do as she's, trying to grow this calf. So we need to be very cognizant of what we're offering these growing yearling pregnant heifers so that they have adequate fetal growth. And we also know that's very important to the quality of their colostrum to have enough nutrition and body condition score on that female so that, that impacts what the calf has to nurse when he first gets up, as well as probably the energy that calf has to get up and nurse. All right. So we've come this far with this female. We need to stay with the program and, doing forage testing, balancing the ration, making sure we're providing her enough nutrition is a great investment of time. Okay. get her where she needs to be. Our target is generally 80 to 85% of her mature weight at the time of her first calving. So if you actually have 1,200 pound cows, great, but it looks to me like a majority of the cows in this U.S. are 1450. So don't deceive yourself by how big she needs to be. Understand what size of cow they're coming out of. And so really, if we just do the things we know we need to do, spend a little more time and care, making sure they have adequate, the feed resources they need, that'll really pay off for us at the time of calving, and the health of the calf and the ability of that female to rebreed. And, people that find challenging getting that female to rebreed the second time may find that they're better off purchasing pregnant females than trying to raise their own if it's hard for you to manage them separately and provide them the nutrition that they need. So an important time in development, important to keeping them around and keeping them in the herd for a long time, is this fall and winter development for spring calving females for the first time.
So for those spring calving heifers that it is their first time, going ahead and getting started on that right now to gain that weight?
Right. It's, depending on what you're saying spring is, if you're not calving until June, well, you got a little more time, but be sure when that third trimester starts, okay? Because that's when the additional gain from that fetus is really going to accelerate, plus her own growth as a young female.
What's the ideal body condition score?
Well, we typically say we'd like to have her at a 6 at the time of calving, and the thought is really we know that female is going to go backwards some after calving. Just it's a big deal to calve the first time, and trying to get them to gain any weight after calving is very difficult, if near impossible, for the level of milk production that we have in most of these cows. So we need that condition on there so that they can do a good job with lactation. And of course, the condition at calving really is the primary driver of how soon they start cycling again after calving. And so if you were a perfect manager, you probably could get away with 5.5, but the 6 is giving us some more cushion, recognizing that we're not all perfect managers, and we want them to be successful. And it's just so important for them to be, like to see a little more condition on there for a cushion for their performance.
Can you get too much condition on them?
Well, you can, particularly if they start to accumulate a lot of internal fat, and then we can have some calving difficulty. And obviously we don't want calving difficulty. And then at some point, and we don't have a lot of data on the tail end of these curves, but there's certainly indication that I'm going to say obese females, our system is 1 to 9. If they were 7.5 to 8 all the time, probably see some lower reproductive performance in those really heavy conditioned cows.
Sandy, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Glad to be here.
That was K-State Beef Reproduction Specialist Sandy Johnson. If you'd like to hear her conversation on spring-born heifer development, you can do so by checking out Agriculture Today's show from November 13th. You can also find more work from Sandy by going to ksubeef.org. Again, that is ksubeef.org. Before we cut to break, I would like to remind you about some upcoming events that are happening with Kansas State University. The first one is K-State Swine Day, where we will be joined by K-State swine specialist Mike Tokash to remind us about what will be happening at the K-State Alumni Center on November 21st.
Swine Day is November 21st. It's a Thursday. It's always the Thursday before Thanksgiving is the easy way to remember when Swine Day is. And we start off the day with a trade show, followed up by all of the research results. And then we have some of our industry partners from JBS, one of our former graduates, Kyle Coble, coming back and talking. And they've done a fabulous job with their production system. And I think people will be interested in hearing some of the things that they've done.
How can people get registered?
call Katie Smith at 785-532-1267, or you can go online at ksuswine.org, and there's a registration there that you can click on to register online.
Once again, that was K-State swine specialist Mike Tokash with reminders about K-State Swine Day, which is taking place November 21st at Kansas State University's Alumni Center. This day will get kicked off at 9:15 with a welcome and wrap up around 3:30 with a reception with K-State Call Hall ice cream. And as Mike mentioned, you can get registered for this event by giving a call to Katie Smith at 785-532-1267. Again, that number is 785-532-1267. You can also get registered by going to ksuswine.org. Again, that is ksuswine.org. Registration is now $50 and can be done at the door. I would like to also let you know about the Sorghum Connection series that will also be taking place this winter. This is in conjunction with the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission, K-State Research and Extension, and the K-State Department of Plant Pathology. This programming intends to provide a comprehensive winter educational program to new, current, or returning sorghum farmers across Kansas. This is an extension of the field days that took place earlier this fall, which focused on stalk rot prevention and producer profitability. This winter series will dive deeper into key topics from the field days previously, with harvest data alongside timely and relevant information from subject matter experts. These events will be held in Salina, Hayes, and Garden City. The first one in Salina is on December 4th, the next one is in Hayes on December 5th, and finally they wrap up in Garden City on December 6th. Attendees will hear insight from subject matter experts from Kansas State University on topics including managing chinch bug populations, effective weed management strategies, unleashing the potential of sorghum in the pet food industry, and navigating the sorghum market outlook. Each event begins at 8 a.m. and concludes approximately at 3 p.m. There is no cost to attend, but they do request that you get registered. I will put a link in today's show notes on agtoday.net where you can get registered, or you can find this registration for yourself by going to ksgrainsorghum.org. Again, that is ksgrainsorghum.org. And just a reminder of these upcoming events, November 21st is K-State Swine Day, and the Kansas Grain Sorghum Connection Winter Series is taking place December 4th in Salina, December 5th in Hayes, and December 6th in Garden City. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. We end today's program with this week's Milk Lines. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk discusses the steps that farmers can take to protect their herds from frostbite and chapped teats this winter.
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy producers concerning preparing for milking in the winter weather. As we approach wintertime, we know that we're going to be dealing with issues with chapped teats as well as possible frozen teats and the issues that follow that. So, what can you do to prepare your dairy herd for this? Well, number one, you need to be thinking about how you're going to prevent frostbite from happening in your herd. As we think about frostbite, one of the critical things that we need to consider is actually wind chill. As wind chill drops below zero, and particularly as we approach minus 25 or colder, it increases our chances that we will actually see frostbite. In fact, that udder as it leaves the milking parlor, if those teats are not dry and they step out into a breeze that's minus 30 below wind chill, the teat skin can actually freeze within a matter of about a minute or less. So it's very, very important that during those times that we adequately protect our herd from the possibility of frostbite. keep in mind that once we have frostbite injury to the teat ends or to the teats, it may take anywhere from about 45 to 60 days for this to completely heal. And the milking process will cause re-injury of the tissue until it is fully healed. So affected cows generally result in a higher incidence of higher somatic cell count as well as mastitis. So doing everything we can to prevent the possibility of frostbite and frozen teats during the wintertime is really important. So number one, we need to have clean, dry bedding available to those cows when they leave the barn and when they lie down. Lying in areas that are wet will increase the chances of chapped teats as well as frostbite during extreme cold weather that we generally experience, at least for a few days here in Kansas. Having adequate bedding during that time is really important, particularly if the ground is frozen. We do not want those animals lying on frozen ground. This is important, especially for our animals that are just prior to freshening. We see generally an increase in the edema and the udder, as well as the teats, and during this time, they're more susceptible to frostbite if they're not carefully protected. For those animals that we're actually milking, changing to winter teat dips that have higher levels of emollients in them are very important. So take a look at the amount of glycerin and lanolin that are in the products that you're currently planning to use. If you do not have winter teat dips on hand, I would encourage you to order those ahead of time. Don't wait until you're actually going to need them, but make sure you have a supply on hand, as it sometimes takes a few days to get these in, even if you have a dairy supplier that is close to your dairy farm. So please allow for some extra time for shipping if you're bringing something in from further outside of the dairy farm. Having this available is really important, but it's also important to educate your milking staff as to what the proper techniques will be to use when we're using winter teat dips when it's cold. So when those will be starting based on temperature, based on wind chill. Another important thing to check is to see how wet the teats are following post-dipping as those animals exit the milking parlor. Again, we'd like to have that teat dry before they exit the milking parlor. So in order to do that, we may have to dry excess post-dip off with a clean towel before they exit the parlor, or sometimes it's helpful to warm the post-dip as it will evaporate quicker if it's warm rather than cold going on to the teat. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers to prepare for winter milking now rather than later.
Thanks, Mike. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.